So, all right. As promised, after the break, we're now going to focus more on the solutions, and we'll do that by starting off with a presentation by Maurits Groen. And Maurits, maybe some of you have already heard of him. He's a prominent name in the Dutch sustainability scene. He started out as a journalist, but he's also a long-time experienced consultant when it comes to sustainability issues. He's the founder of multiple organizations and company, including WakaWaka, that produces solar-powered LED lights. So I think he's going to provide us with very interesting insights. And I'd say, Maurits, the floor is yours.
It's working. Talking about solutions, actually, I think that's hard because I'm not a very happy, clappy person that only talks about solutions, whereas the problems are huge and getting bigger and more severe. The word climate change has been used here for, I think, 50 times this afternoon, this evening. I never use the word climate change because we're talking about climate disruption. Change is very neutral, disruption is not, and words matter. So when I'm talking about solutions, I always do so in the context of a big and a growing and a very urgent problem. And it seems often when we debate about climate disruption that it is our choice to do something or not to do something, like if the laws of nature, which we're dealing with, are laws that we can change or abolish or amend or whatever. And that's not the case. So where we are talking and while we are not acting, nature just responds to our actions. And last year, of course, again, not only we had the weather records every time and again, but we also emitted more greenhouse gases than ever before in the history of mankind. And that's 3 years after the Paris Agreement, which was a wonder in itself. So I've been, like you said, starting to be a journalist in environmental matters in the 70s already. And we wrote about climate disruption by then also. And we knew what was happening because it's about laws of nature. And not much has happened. And still not much is happening. In 2006, I became a publisher by chance, not by choice. Because nobody in the Netherlands wanted to publish the book by Al Gore. Nobody. No one single publisher wanted to do that. So I translated it myself together with a colleague. And the same was true for the film. Nobody wanted to screen the film. And then I organized a premiere in Tuschinski and the Prime Minister came and then it became an issue. But that's 13 years ago. And our emissions are...
The name of the movie?
An Inconvenient Truth, of course, by Al Gore. Everybody knows that, I guess, by now. Okay. So then I started to, like you said, to establish companies that actually continued communicating about the problems, but especially about the solutions, by doing something about the problem. Because people listen more to what you do than to what you say. Like children look more to what their parents do than to what they say they should do. So I started a company on, like you said, on solar power, not only light, but also power banks that you can charge your phone with or your radio or whatever. Since a lot of African people still live in energy poverty, and when our choice is, or our insight, that they should not, that they should skip the fossil fuel era and immediately start like they did with mobile phones, instead of laying the landlines like we did 100 years ago, immediately turn to solar. And Africa, like you said, is a huge continent, and it has a lot of sun, whereas solar is, in contrary to coal, oil, gas, which will be running out apart from causing a lot of problems. It's about eternal. It is delivered at your doorstep every day for free, and it's safe at the same time. So why don't we turn to that solution right away? So I produce that WakaWaka, which is a strange name. Of course, it's African. It's Swahili, shine bright. But then again, the food system is an even bigger problem, because you can do without power. It's difficult, but you can. But without food, it's getting really, really difficult. And our food system is disastrous for the planet, disastrous. Our chicken, our cows, our pigs, they eat away the Amazon rainforest in the form of soybeans that we plant after we cut the trees and we set fire to them. So I don't have much time, so I make it very condensed. So I started a company called Kipster, which produces eggs and chicken meat, which is the animal protein with the smallest footprint, without any footprint, because we do not grow any food for the chicken. They only eat so-called waste. That's part of the solution. 100 years ago, there was not one single chicken farmer in the world. There wasn't a pig farmer in the world. Of course, farmers had chicken and they had pigs, but only to the extent that they had waste, or that the chicken could run around, find their own food. We didn't grow any food for those animals. And that's a natural system. So we should go back to that, which means that we should eat much less meat, if at all. It's not healthy if we do so. So by producing alternatives, and I can mention some more, I won't because of the time. By producing alternatives, I try to show that it's possible. One of the later things is, and that's what I'm going to talk about, is a book called Draw Down. Is there anyone in the room who has heard about the book? Yes, several ones. Draw down is a word which describes the moment in time that the concentration of CO2, which is a greenhouse gas, goes down. In the pre-industrial era, the concentration was 270 parts per million in the air. It's now 410, whereas the safe level is 350. We're approaching the 450 mark very rapidly. We will cross that quite soon, actually, I think. And that will mean that we will cross the 2 degrees centigrade level. Even if mankind would be able to fulfill and implement all the agreements, all the promises that they made in Paris, we will still cross the 3 degrees threshold. And one of the books that I published after Al Gore's book was called 6 Degrees by Mark Linus. He was a journalist from England, a scientific journalist, and he had a gigantic task for himself, set for himself, to go through all the literature that was available by then, that was 10 years ago, to see, to evaluate what the consequences would be if the global or the regional general concentration, the general temperature would rise 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 degrees. 3 degrees is almost permanent disaster, you could say. We are going to cross that threshold, even if we implement all the plans that we have promised to do in time, which we all know we won't. The book Drawdown describes the top 100 solutions, top 100, there's many more, top 100, 80 ones that are already on the shelf, are already implemented, are very profitable to implement, that exist today, and 20 actually are what they call coming solutions, coming attractions, already in the pipeline, already proven, but not yet implemented on a scale that you can implement on a large scale. So the top 80 solutions can already, for a very large part, 3/4 solve the problem. So what's the problem? Because that book has a structure which has been able to calculate to a very deep degree of certainty what the investment would be globally from now up to 2050, and what the return would be in financial terms. On average, it's 250%. So the return is 250% on your investment, financially, let alone that you prevent a lot of cost that you run into when you have the consequence of climate disruption upon you. And that is only damages. That's not investment in the future. The very strange or the surprising thing is that a number of those solutions, a number are very, very ordinary. We know all that. We should not cut down rainforest. Our peatland, we should not drain it from water, etc. We should have silvopasture, we should have agroforestry, we should have all those kind of things. But the number one solution, which surpasses all wind turbines and all solar power combined and all electric cars together, is the prevention of cooling agents in our fridges, in air conditioning agents, and in cool houses, warehouses, to escape into the environment. Because when we had the Montreal Agreement about the CFKs, to prevent the hole in the ozone layer to get bigger, we did that very rapidly. But we replaced those CFKs with HFCs, a chemical agent which is not harming the ozone layer, but it does act as a very potent greenhouse gas. 1,000 to 9,000 times stronger than CO2. And there's a lot of those around. So if we take care of that, and we invest in recycling, etc., and destruction in a good way, in an environmentally safe way, we prevent a lot of problems. The number 3 is the prevention of food waste. 1/3 of all food globally, 1/3, is not being eaten after having been produced, which takes a lot of water, which takes a lot of resources, energy, etc., etc. Capital, 1/3. And in developing countries, that loss takes place in the beginning because there's no good storage facilities, the infrastructure is bad, so you lose a lot. And in developed countries, it is us, the consumers, that just throw away. We do not consume. Or we throw away after half having been consumed, not all of it that we have made for ourselves. 1/3. So if we would do a little bit clever with that, that's a huge contribution to solving that climate problem. Number 6, very surprising, education of girls in developing countries. There's 130 million girls that do not have one single day of education. Not one. If they would, primary, secondary education, it has been calculated in this book, that would prevent the birth, it sounds a bit silly, but to prevent the birth of 483 million births, which means almost 1 billion people that will not consume all the things that we do, which will prevent a lot of conflict for all those scarce resources. Apart from women leading a fuller life, having other possibilities than only having 8 children, of which half dies, and the other 4 are necessary for old age pension income for the people in their old age. Just like us. Very surprising solutions, and sometimes very, very ordinary. All the solutions are here. And when talking about solutions, I'm enthusiastic about it. I'm at the same time very, very angry at the politicians that disregard all the solutions that are there. The short-termism is blatant. All the solutions are there, they're profitable, but they just do not want to propagate, to tell about it and to rally the people behind it. They just do not want to show us what's ahead. And again, talking about solutions, happy clappy, they are all there, they're profitable. If we do not, the consequences will be upon us. So it's two side coins. When you want to solve a problem, you first have to convince people that there is a problem. And if you paint the picture too dark, people will give up. They will run to despair, from denial to despair. So that's not a positive thing. If you only talk about solutions, people think, well, that will be solved. We don't have to do anything with it. So it's a really subtle scale what to do. You have to alarm people, but not to the extent that they panic. You have to motivate them to do something by showing that it can be done and it can be profitable. And actually, the lead author of this, he's been in the Netherlands, and then that's what I'm ending with. The lead author was here last month at my invitation. And he said, after having talked about all these solutions for more than an hour, he says, even if climate disruption did not exist, even if we would not have any of those problems that he's been talking about, this would be the life that we would like to live. This is like we would like to choose, no matter what the problems. So why don't we do that? Thank you.
Thank you, Maurits. Yeah.
This is the book, by the way.
It's impressive to see that you're certainly maybe not a happy, clappy person, but someone who understands the enormity of this problem, but still manages to remain hopeful. But maybe one brief question before we go to the reaction is also then the question: if we know what the solutions is, then why? So maybe the question is not what are the solutions, but why don't we implement it? Why is it that politicians are stuck in this short-termism?
There's many answers to that, of course. One, of course, is that politicians want to be chosen again. And it takes a lot of courage, knowledge and courage, and perseverance to put things on the agenda when they're not really nice and funny. And when the gain is not around the corner, when you have to persevere in order to really make an impact. That's one thing, of course. And then again, there's a lot of, I'm not a conspiracy person, but there's a lot of vested interest in the current system. Even today, we invest 400 billion every year in new fossil fuel installations, new ones. The agriculture that we have is massively addicted to fossil fuels. Fertilizers, pesticides, machinery, processing equipment, it is all fossil fuel based. So it takes a lot of
it's also powerful
system
losers.
Change. Sorry?
There are powerful losers, potential losers if we make the transition.
Yeah, that's a good summary of it. Yeah.
Okay, so I was wondering maybe Andrew and Marnix, if you could give a reaction to something you mentioned, like the question: should Africa or African countries follow the Western path of development, or can they like skip the fossil fuel stage? You've mentioned that in Zimbabwe there's still a lot of coal-powered infrastructural projects. How do you view this, Marnix?
Well, I know it from a very small scale. This small-time black tobacco farmer can only phone to me because he has a small solar system in his hut to recharge his phone. So it's not only using energy, but it's also your connection to the world, basically, by small solar systems. And they're affordable. I mean, if he has a good crop, then he can buy it. And he did. So it is happening a lot already, I think. But a general thing like getting girls into classes, it's a bit more long-term solution, of course. But if you raise the middle class, if you have if you want to send your children to school, it helps if you don't have too many children. So that's a way to get less population. Yeah, I see that solution.